The morning sun slowly stretched across the bedroom in thin, golden lines. These lines were like gentle fingers of light touching the carpet and the edges of the furniture. The light peeked through the blinds that were only half closed, creating long patterns on the floor that looked like soft zebra stripes. The first thing she felt when she woke up was a cold. It was a deep, quiet cold that made her toes curl under the thick covers. Usually, when she reached out her hand in the early morning, she felt the warmth of another person. She expected to feel his warm skin, his steady breath, and the heavy, safe weight of his body next to her. But today, the white sheets beside her were chilly and very flat. She reached her fingers out, hoping to feel him there, maybe just hidden under a pile of pillows, but all she touched was the empty, smooth fabric of the bed. It felt like cold ice against her palm. Her heart skipped a beat, making a small thump in her chest. "Daniel?" she called out softly. Her voice sounded scratchy and thick because she had just woken up. There was no answer from the other side of the room. She sat up very quickly, pushing the heavy, warm blankets away from her body. Something felt very wrong, like a puzzle piece was missing. The air in the house was too still and too quiet. It felt like the house was empty in a way that made her skin crawl and feel tiny bumps. Her heart began to beat fast, like a little drum inside her chest, as she moved her legs to the edge of the bed. She walked toward the bathroom with quiet, bare feet on the wood floor. It was empty. The mirror was dry, and there was no steam from a morning shower. She started to move through the rest of the dark house, and with every step she took, she felt more and more afraid. She saw the closet door was standing wide open. When she looked inside, she saw big, empty spaces where his blue work shirts and his soft sweaters used to hang. His work boots, the heavy brown ones he always left right by the front door, so he could find them easily, were gone. She looked at the flat top of the wooden dresser, where he always kept his silver watch, his leather wallet, and his metal keys. There was nothing there at all. It was completely bare, and even the dust had been wiped away. A cold feeling of realization moved up her back like a drop of freezing water. Daniel was gone. He wasn't just away at work for the morning. He wasn't out getting a cup of hot coffee or running to the local store for a carton of milk. He was really, truly gone. She felt a sharp catch in her throat that made it hard to swallow. She ran to her phone on a nightstand, her hands shaking so much she could barely press the buttons to unlock it. There were no new messages. No one had called her during the night. She tried to call his number, but it did not ring. It went straight to a recorded voice, saying he wasn't available to talk. She looked all around the house, her eyes searching for a small note, a long letter, or any clue at all left on a table or stuck to the fridge. But there was nothing. No warning, no explanation, just a heavy, thick silence that filled every room. But we need to look back at the night when everything started to change for them. There was a local neighborhood pub that everyone liked to go to. It was the kind of place that smelled like old, dark wood and comfortable, worn-out leather. You could always smell the warm, salty scent of fried food in the air. It wasn't a fancy or expensive place, but it was a place you could trust, just like the hard-working people who went there after a long day at their jobs. Daniel was sitting in their usual spot in a padded booth near the back, where it was quiet. He held a cold bottle of his favorite drink, and he could see small, clear water droplets forming on the dark with the table. He had a steady job at the local manufacturing plant where they made things out of metal. It was hard work that kept him on his feet all day, but it was a good job that had lasted for almost 10 years. It wasn't the kind of job people wrote famous stories about, but it paid all the bills and kept them safe. After a long shift, he and the people he worked with always knew they could come here to sit down and relax. His best friend Greg was sitting there, too. Greg was leaning forward with a big, happy smile on his face, telling a funny story about a new person who had just started working with him at the plant. I'm telling you, that poor kid looked like his heart was going to stop when the boss called him into the big office. Greg said, laughing and shaking his head. He looked like he was about to admit to doing something bad that he didn't even do. Everyone at the wooden table started laughing, including Daniel. It felt good to laugh after working so hard. It felt good to be in a place where things were simple and honest. Daniel took a slow sip of his drink, enjoying the cold, crisp taste in his mouth. He felt the tiredness in his muscles start to fade away like a cloud moving past. He was just about to say something funny back to Greg when he felt a strange shift in the room. It was like a weird feeling in the air that you can't quite explain with words. He looked across the bar, past the neon signs and the rows of glasses, and that is when he saw her. His wife was sitting in a booth where the lights were very dim. She was laughing, and her thin fingers were wrapped around the long stem, a wine glass filled with deep red wine. She looked very happy, but she wasn't with him. Daniel gripped his cold drink tighter until his knuckles turned white. He looked at the man sitting next to her in the shadows. The man was sitting too close for comfort. His arm was resting easily along the top back of the booth right behind her. He was leaning toward her in a way that showed they knew each other very, very well. Then, it happened right before his eyes. It was like the whole world stopped turning just to show him this one moment. She leaned in and kissed the man. It wasn't a quick kiss or friendly one you give to a cousin. It was a kiss that showed they had a long, secret history together. It was a kiss full of secrets and broken promises. Daniel felt something inside his heart snap and break into pieces. The rest of the bar stayed exactly the same as it was before. People were still laughing at jokes and talking about their days. The football game was still playing on the loud TV over the long counter. But in Daniel's head, everything went completely silent. It was a loud, painful silence that took over everything else. His whole world had just tipped over like a glass of water. Greg was still talking and laughing at his own funny joke. He had no idea that Daniel's life had just fallen apart in one single second. But Daniel didn't scream out. He didn't move a muscle. He didn't even seem to breathe for a moment. He just sat there in the dark, watching the truth come out like a mean joke. His wife was cheating on him, and she had no idea he was standing right there in the same room watching it happen. Very slowly and very carefully, Daniel put his drink back on the table. The water from the cold bottle left a wet circle on the wood. It was a small, unimportant stain, and he thought that in time, this painful moment would feel like a small stain, too. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out his leather wallet, and put some paper money on the table to pay for his drink. Then, without saying a word and without looking back at the booth in the corner, he walked out of the pub. The cold night air hit his face like a block of ice. It was a huge change from the hot fire he felt burning in his chest. His footsteps made a steady, rhythmic sound on the sidewalk as he walked away. He wasn't rushing or running. He didn't know exactly where he was going yet, but he knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. The night after he saw them at the pub, Daniel could hardly sleep at all. He just lay there in the dark, looking up at the white ceiling. He felt a heavy weight on his chest, like someone was pressing down on him with both hands, making it very hard to breathe. His mind kept playing that scene in the bar over and over again like a movie that wouldn't stop. He kept seeing the way her fingers touched the glass. He saw the way she tilted her head back when she laughed at that man. He saw how easy it was for her to lean into that other person. He saw the kiss. By the time the yellow sun came up, he knew he couldn't pretend it didn't happen. There was no more room to doubt what he saw. His wife was not being faithful to him. The only thing he didn't know was how long this had been going on. Now, Daniel wasn't the kind of person who did big things without thinking first. He never had been that way. He was the kind of man who liked to have a solid plan. He was patient and very organized. He believed that knowing the real facts was the most important thing you could do. So, instead of getting into a big, loud fight, instead of screaming at her in the kitchen or asking questions that she would just turn into more lies, he did something much smarter. He went to find the real truth. And that meant he had to hire someone who was an expert at finding secrets. He went to see a man named Harrison Cole. Cole wasn't what Daniel thought a private investigator would look like. He didn't wear an old, messy coat or smoke cigarettes in a dark, scary office. Cole was younger, maybe in his late 30s. He dressed in nice, clean clothes that weren't too flashy or expensive. His eyes were gray and very sharp, like he noticed every little thing in the room. His office was small and hidden away in a quiet part of the busy city. It smelled like old paper books and fresh, hot coffee. You want to be sure, Cole said to him after Daniel told him what he suspected about his wife. But let's be honest with each other. You already know deep down what is happening. Daniel breathed out slowly through his nose. "I need the proof," he said firmly. Cole nodded his head and put his fingers together on the desk. "That makes sense," he said in a calm voice. "The usual plan includes photos, videos, and reports that show exactly when and where things happened. I can even look at phone records and bills if I need to. I will be very careful and very quiet. No one will know I am looking into her life." "How long will this take?" Daniel asked. Cole shrugged his shoulders. "It depends on how many mistakes she makes. Maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. If she is very careful and hides things well, it might take a month." He leaned forward across his wooden desk. "But here's the thing, Mr. Carter. If you are coming to see me, you already know the marriage is over. You aren't here to find out why she did it. You are here so you can end it the right way." Daniel looked at him for a long time. Then he simply nodded his head. "Find me everything," he said. The next few days felt like a very long, slow kind of pain for Daniel. He went to work at the factory, just like he always did. He pretended everything was fine and normal. He pretended. He didn't know what was going on behind his back. Every night, he sat at the dinner table with his wife. He watched her smile across the table. He listened to her talk about how her day went. And every time his phone made a small sound because of a message from Cole, he knew he was getting closer to the truth. Then, one night, the first bit of evidence came. It was just one photo. Daniel opened the message and looked at the picture on the screen. He felt his chest get very tight. There was his wife, and there was the same man from the bar. They were at a different place this time. It was a very nice restaurant on the other side of town. They were sitting very close together at a small table. They were sharing a piece of cake between them, and you could tell just by looking at them that they were more than just friends. Another message came right after that. It said, "Tuesday, 7:42 p.m. at the steakhouse." Daniel put his phone down very carefully on the counter. His hands were steady now. He knew now that this wasn't just a one-time mistake she made. It wasn't something he had misunderstood because he was tired. This was a plan. This was real, and it was still happening right now. The search for the truth went on for several weeks. Cole was very good at his job. Every few days, Daniel would get more pieces of the story. He got clear photos, dates, and locations. He saw a hotel room that was booked under a fake name. He saw credit card bills with charges for expensive things Daniel had never seen in their house. He stopped sleeping well at night. He stopped eating much. He still hadn't told her he knew. Not yet. He was waiting until he had every single piece of proof he needed. And when Cole finally gave him a big, thick envelope, Daniel knew the waiting was finally over. Back in his own office at the plant, Daniel sat with a folder in front of him. He put his hands flat on the desk. He already knew what he would find inside, but knowing it in your mind and seeing it with your eyes were two very different things. Very slowly, he opened the folder. The first page was a printed report. It had names, dates, and places listed. It was a timeline of how she had betrayed him. The next part was a bunch of clear photos. Some of them were simple, like his wife and a man sitting at a small cafe or walking down the street together, their hands touching. Others were much worse. They were private and showed things that no one could argue with or explain away. The last thing in the folder was a small silver computer drive. Daniel didn't even need to watch what was on it to know it was bad. He sat back in his chair. The air in the room felt very thick and hard to breathe. This was it. This was the final proof. There was no way to run away from it now. The marriage was finished. His wife just didn't know it yet. And when she did find out, it wouldn't be because he had a big argument with her. It wouldn't be because they fought and screamed. It would be because he simply left without saying a word. He would leave without leaving any way for her to find him. Because Daniel Carter was a smart man who thought ahead. He was a man who knew how to wait for the right moment. And now that he had everything he needed, it was time to move. Daniel had always been someone who planned things very carefully. He never made big choices in a hurry. He always thought about what would happen next. That was how he did so well at his job at the factory for 10 years. That was how he took such good care of their money over the years. And that was how he kept his feelings hidden even after he found out his wife was cheating. Now, that same patience let him plan his exit, so she wouldn't have any idea what was coming. By the time she woke up, He would be gone forever. There would be no warning. No note left on the kitchen table. No explanation. Just an empty house. For several weeks, Daniel had been quietly taking himself out of the life they shared. He made sure everything was finished before the morning he walked away. The bank accounts were now separate. He moved his half of the savings into a new account that only he could touch. The credit cards they used together were closed. Any bills they shared were now in her name only. The legal papers for the divorce were all ready. His lawyer had finished everything to make sure there were no mistakes. There was no way for her to fight it or take his money. The papers would be given to her later that morning by a person, once he was already far away in another city. He had already written his letter to quit his job. It was set to be sent to the office at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning on his last day. The factory would keep going without him, and he would keep going without them. He had a new apartment waiting for him already. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small, clean place to live in a different city. It was a place where no one knew who he was. It was a place where she wouldn't be able to find him. He even had a new job lined up that would start in a few weeks. Every small detail had been taken care of. Every loose end was tied up tight. By the time the sun came up, Daniel Carter would be gone from this life. It was 4:30 in the morning when Daniel woke up. He hadn't slept much, but that was okay. He sat up in the dark and listened to how quiet the house was. The only sound he could hear was the steady, soft sound of his wife breathing next to him. She was sleeping deeply, dreaming of something else. She had no idea that when she opened her eyes in a few hours, her whole world would be completely different. He got out of bed very carefully so the mattress didn't squeak. He moved through the dark house without making a single sound. He had already packed his big suitcase and a small bag and hidden them in the car. He only took the things he really needed, like his clothes and important papers. He took a few small things that meant a lot to him, like a picture of his parents, but he left everything else behind. He decided she could keep the house and the furniture. She could live with the things that reminded her of what she had destroyed with her secrets. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom for one last minute. He looked at her while she slept. A few months ago, he might have felt very sad. He might have felt like he wished things were different. He might have even felt bad about leaving her all alone. But now he felt nothing at all. He went into the kitchen and put his gold wedding ring on the counter. He hadn't really worn it in weeks, not since the day he saw her with that other man in the bar. To him, it was just a cold piece of metal that didn't mean anything anymore. The house smelled a little bit like flowers and coffee from the night before. That smell used to make him feel happy and safe. Now, it just felt like another part of a big, long lie. Daniel breathed out slowly. He put the strap of his bag over his shoulder. He didn't stop to think twice. He didn't wonder if he was doing the right thing. He didn't look back at the rooms where they had lived for years. He walked to the front door, turned the metal handle, and stepped out into the cold air of the early morning. The door made a small clicking sound as it closed. That was the sound of his old life ending. By 5 o'clock in the morning, Daniel was in his car. He was driving down a long, empty highway. He watched the lights of the city get smaller and smaller in his mirror until they were gone. By the time she woke up, he was already like a ghost. The morning started out like any other day for her. She stretched in the big bed and reached out to feel the warmth of her husband, but the sheets were cold. She didn't feel anything but empty space. She sat up and rubbed her sleepy eyes. The room was very quiet. It was too quiet. Daniel always left for work early, but he always made some noise. Usually, she could hear the water running in the shower. She could hear the sound of a ceramic coffee cup hitting the counter. She could hear the rustle of his shirt as he put it on. But this morning, there was no sound at all. She put her bare feet on the cool wooden floor. She felt a weird, sinking feeling in her stomach, like something was very wrong. She walked to the bathroom, but it was empty and dry. She went to the closet and saw that half of the clothes were missing. She felt her breath catch in her throat. She looked around the room with wide eyes. She went to the dresser. The watch he always left there was gone. His leather wallet was gone. The brown boots he kept by the door were missing. His jacket, his keys, the things he always left on the chair, they were all gone. Her heart started pounding in her ears. She grabbed her phone and tried to look at the screen, but her hands were shaking too much. No new messages. No missed calls. She called him. It rang only once, and then the voicemail started. "Daniel? Where are you? Please call me back right away," she said. Her voice was shaking, but she tried to tell herself it was just a mistake. Maybe he had a meeting very early. Maybe his phone ran out of power. She tried to believe those things, but deep down, she knew this wasn't a mistake. Something was very wrong. She ran through the house, looking in every single room. She opened every door, even the ones to the attic, hoping to find him. The kitchen was perfect. The coffee maker hadn't been used. The counters were clean and bare. He always made coffee in the morning. Always. She opened the front door and looked outside. His car was not there in the driveway. She ran back inside and called him again. Voicemail. She called again and again, but he did not answer. Her hands were trembling as she looked through her phone and called his job at the factory. A woman answered the phone. "Hello, this is Emily Carter. Can I talk to Daniel?" There was a short silence on the other end. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter. Daniel quit his job a few days ago." The world felt like it was spinning around her. "I'm sorry, what?" she said, holding the phone very tight. "That can't be right. Are you sure?" "Yes," the woman said. "His last day was yesterday." She stood there, frozen like a statue. She could barely hear the woman asking if she was okay. He had quit his job and never told her. The phone almost fell out of her hand. She ended the call and called Greg, his best friend. The phone rang many times before Greg finally answered. "Hey, Emily," Greg said. He sounded normal, like nothing was wrong. "Where is Daniel?" she asked. She didn't even say hello. Greg waited a second. "I don't know," he said. "You work with him. You have to know something." Greg sounded sad on the phone. "I promise he didn't tell me much. He just said he was moving on to something else. That is all I know." "Moving on to where?" she yelled into the phone. There was a long silence. "I wish I could help you," Greg said. His voice was very quiet and low. She hung up the phone. She called everyone she knew. She called his other friends and his family. No one knew anything. Some people sounded confused. Some people sounded like they didn't want to talk to her. Panic started to fill her chest. It felt like she couldn't breathe. Daniel wasn't at work. Daniel wasn't answering his phone. Daniel wasn't anywhere. She ran to the small office in their house. She pulled open all the drawers. She looked through all the papers. Everything was empty. His papers, his files, even the small things like his favorite pen or the book he was reading, all of it was gone. She went back to the closet and looked again. She pulled the clothes back, hoping to see him hiding there like a game. But all she saw were empty plastic hangers. She couldn't smell him on the bed anymore. And then she finally understood. He didn't just leave for work today. He had left her for good. Her legs felt weak, and she had to hold on to the dresser so she wouldn't fall down on the floor. She grabbed her phone and called him one more time. She was crying now, and her heart was beating so fast it actually hurt. Voicemail. "Daniel, please," she whispered to the phone. "Call me. Just tell me where you are." She waited for a sound in the quiet house, but nothing happened, just silence. She tried again and again, but it was always the same recorded message. A sob came out of her throat, but she tried to stop it. She couldn't give up yet. She went back downstairs and looked everywhere. She looked for a note or an email. She looked for anything that would tell her why he left so suddenly. But there were no clues. There were no goodbyes. The house was just empty because he had erased himself from her life. As the hours went by, she started to feel the reality of it. It felt like a heavy weight she couldn't move. She sat on the couch and just stared at the wall. Her phone was in her hand, but it was useless. Daniel was gone, and she knew it was her fault. Her mind was racing. She tried to think of why he would leave so fast, but she already knew the answer. She had been too careless with her secrets. She thought she could hide her lies forever. She thought she had plenty of time and that she was in control of the situation. But Daniel knew. He had seen what she was doing. And instead of fighting with her, instead of letting her tell more lies to his face, he just disappeared. She felt a chill go down her spine when she realized how much he must have planned this. This wasn't something he did because he was mad in the moment. This was a long plan. He had waited and watched. He had prepared everything. And when he was ready, he just walked away. Tears ran down her face as she put her head in her hands. She had betrayed him, and now he was gone. There were no fights, no final words, just a door that was closed and silence that would never go away. Daniel Carter drove through the long, straight highway for many hours. He was leaving behind the only life he had known for a long time. The city where he worked, the house he lived in, and the streets he knew so well. It was all behind him now. A new life was waiting for him. It was a life without lies. It was a life where he didn't have to worry about being betrayed by someone he loved. He didn't look back in the mirror. He didn't let himself feel sorry for her. He had already spent many long nights feeling those things. He had spent weeks slowly pulling himself away from everything. Now, it was time to start over. He moved to a town called Asheville in North Carolina. It was very different from the busy city he left. It was quiet and surrounded by beautiful, green mountains. The streets were winding, and there were many nice coffee shops. He felt a sense of peace there that he hadn't felt in a very long time. His new apartment was small, but it was nice. It had one bedroom and a balcony where he could look out at the quiet street and the trees. It wasn't a big place, but it belonged only to him. There were no memories of the past there. It was a clean start. He found a job at a small engineering company. It was smaller than the place he used to work, but that was what he wanted. He didn't want any stress or office drama. It was a perfect fit for him. People at work were nice, but he didn't talk to them much. He wasn't ready to be close to anyone yet. His days were simple and good. He went for a run in the morning through the tall trees. He got hot coffee at the same little cafe every day. He worked hard, and in the evening, he would read a book or take a long walk. He liked being alone. It felt safe. But even though he liked his new life, a small part of him wondered if he would be alone forever. Then, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, he went to a local farmer's market. He wasn't looking for anything special, just something to do. That was when he saw her. She was standing at a table looking at some fresh, green basil. She looked like she was thinking very hard about it. She moved in a very natural and easy way, and she had a very kind smile when she talked to the person selling the vegetables. She saw him looking at her and smiled. "You should try these strawberries," she said in a friendly voice. She held up a small basket of bright red berries. "They are the best ones in town." Daniel wasn't sure what to say at first. "Is that so?" he asked. She nodded her head. "I come here every Saturday. You can trust me." He bought the berries, and that is how they met. Her name was Anna. She was different from anyone he had known before. She was truly kind and very thoughtful. She was a teacher, and she spent her days helping children learn. She had a very gentle way about her. She didn't ask Daniel about his past right away. She didn't push him to talk about things he wasn't ready for. That made him feel like he could trust her. They started meeting on the weekends. They took long walks and had quiet dinners together. They would talk for a long time over hot coffee at night. With Anna, there were no secrets. There was no doubt about where she was. Everything was clear and honest. She was nothing like the woman he had left. And for the first time in a long, long time, Daniel felt happy again. A year later, they got married. It was a very small wedding. Only a few close friends were there to see them. They said their vows under a big, old oak tree. It was simple and full of love. There was no stress. It was just two people who found something real. Daniel had thought he would never want to be married again. He thought he would never trust anyone with his heart. But with Anna, it was different. She was steady. She never made him wonder if she was telling the truth. This was a marriage based on being honest. And when Anna told him she was going to have a baby, Daniel felt like his life was finally complete. When he held his baby daughter for the first time, he realized how far he had come. He had walked away from a life of pain. He had built himself back up from nothing. He had found love and a real family. He looked at the tiny hands of his daughter and made a promise. He promised he would never let the past hurt them. He would protect this new life with all he had. He would finally let go of the ghost from before. Daniel had almost forgotten what it was like to be worried about the past. For a long time, he lived in peace. His days were full of work and his family. But the past has a way of coming back, even if you run far away. It happened on a quiet afternoon. Anna and the baby were visiting her parents for the day. Daniel was home alone, cleaning up the kitchen. He went outside to get the mail, and that is when he saw a car parked on the street. At first, he didn't think much of it. He thought it was just someone lost looking for a house. Then the door opened and she stepped out. It was Emily. For a moment, neither of them said anything. She looked different than he remembered. Her hair was pulled back and she looked much thinner. She was wearing simple clothes, not the expensive ones she used to like to buy, but her eyes looked afraid and tired. Daniel held on to the mail very tightly in his hand. He wasn't ready for this. "Daniel," she said. Her voice was very quiet and small. He didn't say anything to her. She looked at the nice house. "I had to find you." Daniel felt a bad feeling in his stomach. Of course she had. He had tried to disappear. But Emily was always the kind of person who had to have the last word. "How did you find me?" he asked. "It wasn't easy," she said. That was probably true. He had worked very hard to hide his life, but she had found him anyway. "Daniel, please, just give me a few minutes to talk." There was a time when he would have listened to her for hours. There was a time when he would have felt bad for her. But those times were gone. He didn't want the neighbors to see them talking in the driveway, so he let her inside. The house was very quiet. It smelled like coffee and baby powder. Emily looked at the pictures on the walls. She saw pictures of Anna and the baby. She saw a life she wasn't part of. Daniel closed the door. "Say what you need to say," he said. "I didn't know what happened," she said. "One day you were there, and then you were just gone." "That was the point," Daniel told her. She looked like she was in pain. "I deserved an explanation." Daniel laughed, but it wasn't a happy or nice laugh. "You deserved an explanation?" he asked. "You lost the right to know anything the moment you cheated on me with that man." She flinched as if he had hit her. "I wasn't thinking, Daniel. I made mistakes. But you just left. You didn't give me a chance to explain or fix it." "There was nothing to explain," he said. She took a step toward him. "I still loved you." Daniel felt a bitter taste in his mouth. "No, Emily, you didn't. You loved the comfort of our life. You loved the convenience. But if you loved me, you wouldn't have done that to us." She had tears in her eyes, but he didn't care. "I've been looking for you for months," she whispered. "I just needed to see you one more time. I wanted to know why you didn't let me fix it." Daniel looked at her. "Because some things can be fixed once they are broken." "Do you hate me?" she asked. Daniel thought about it. Once he did. He felt a lot of anger before. But now he didn't. "No," he said. "I don't hate you. You just don't mean anything to me anymore." Her face looked like it was falling apart, but she nodded. Daniel went to a shelf and pulled out a thick folder. He had kept it for a long time, just in case this day came. Now, he was going to use it for the last time. "You want to know why I left?" he asked. She took the folder. Her hands were shaking. "What is this?" she asked. "The truth," Daniel said. She opened the folder. The color left her face. The first page was a photo of her and the man from the bar. It was a different night. They were very close. There was no way she could say it wasn't what it looked like. Her breath sounded strange. She turned to the next page. It was a photo of them at a restaurant. She was laughing. The man was looking at her with love. Emily swallowed hard. She turned the page again. It was a hotel bill. Her name wasn't on it, but the date was the same night. She said she was working late at her job. She saw the credit card bill. She thought he would never see it. She turned more pages. There were text messages. They were full of love and secret plans. These were things she never said to Daniel. Her hands were shaking so much the paper was rattling. She kept turning the pages. Every page showed more of what she had done. There were more photos and more receipts. Everything was right there for her to see. By the time she got to the end, she was holding the folder so tight the edges were bent. They stood in silence in the kitchen. Daniel watched her. "Daniel, She tried to say something, but she couldn't. "Don't lie," Daniel said. "Not now." She had no excuse. She had to face what she did. The room felt very heavy. She looked at him, looking for a sign that he still cared about her. But his face was like stone. She started to cry. "I made a mistake," she said. Daniel took a step back. He didn't want her to touch him. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. He didn't say anything at all. "I thought we could fix this," she said, sobbing. "There's no we." "Emily," he said. His voice was like a sharp knife. "There hasn't been a we for a very long time. Please," she begged. "I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do." Daniel didn't say anything for a moment. Then he stood up tall. He walked to the front door. He didn't look at her. He opened the door wide. The fresh mountain air came in. Then he looked at her. His eyes were empty and clear. "Get out," he said. Emily gasped. She looked like she wanted to say more, but she knew it was over. She walked slowly out the door. She turned back one last time, but Daniel didn't wait. He closed the door. He was finished with the past. What do you think about what happened? Was Daniel right to leave the way he did? Should he have talked to her first? Let us know what you think in the comments. If you like this story, please subscribe to the group of caring experts who bring you these stories and give us a like.